Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
Ty Lawson got himself traded to the Rockets, which I find to be absolutely fascinating that this trade happened. I find it fascinating for a couple of reasons. Number one, on a bit of a somber note, I am not so keen on the notion that teams get a guy or have a guy who appears to have a problem. And I know, look, people get real antsy when you start talking about folks having drinking problems because, quite honestly, it starts hitting you a little bit too close to home. You start looking at yourself. But I think it's fair to raise the question whether or not a guy who's got 2 DUIs in 6 months has a problem. Like the immediate reaction as it was reported from the Nuggets about Lawson getting that second DUI, where apparently he was drunk. But their reaction to him getting the second DUI was one of anger. And I don't know how I feel about the idea about being angry when somebody clearly seems to have some level of problem. And they slip on that problem and your response is being mad. That's how we treat things, though, with alcohol. Like, I just don't think, generally speaking, that we treat alcohol very seriously. But Lawson has been traded to the Rockets, and the one thing about getting traded to Houston is John Lucas is in Houston, and, man, we just sign everybody up for John Lucas. We just give John Lucas his time away. Like, oh, he's going to Houston. Well, he can just go see John Lucas. Like, every now and then I wonder if John Lucas want to be like, nah, man, I'm kind of full up with problem cases right now. No, I'm good. You got to save yourself, pimp. I'm a little busy over here. Then I realized that John Lucas charges money for these things. John Lucas is like, yeah, send him on down. I'll put him in the line. But if he doesn't get traded to Houston, I don't think that people are quite as on board with this trade for the Rockets as they happen to be because they just feel like John Lucas is going to fix it. Now, there are basketball reasons why I question this trade for the Rockets. Here's something about Ty Lawson that you may not have realized. I like to get a little geeky with my basketball stats. Like, not too geeky. I don't like to throw out too many, like, true shooting percentage, for example, right? I don't fully understand how true shooting percentage works, so I'll never be one rattling off true shooting percentage numbers for you. Like, I don't get it. But in case you're curious, Ty Lawson's true shooting percentage has basically dropped every year that he's been in the league. Okay. This is the thing, though. If you've watched Lawson play at any point in your life, you understand what the game is with Lawson. Speed. He is fast. If you're not going to play fast basketball, then it's almost pointless to have him. The question is, how fast is the basketball that he can continue to play, and how long will he be able to keep playing fast basketball? Here's why I bring that up. When Lawson was a rookie, 45% of his shots were taken within 3 feet. That's according to basketballreference.com. 45% of his shots were taken within 3 feet. He was getting to the rim. 21% of his shots were taken from three-point range. Now, if you've watched the Rockets play, you know that the way that they want to play is they want to shoot layups, they want to dunk, and they want to shoot three-pointers. They don't really want to do much of what's in between. All right. So, rookie year for Lawson. 45% of his shots at the rim, 21% of his shots from three-point range. Last year, 25% of Lawson's shots at the rim, 22% of Lawson's shots from three-point range. So Lawson is shooting fewer shots at the rim, but not really more shots from three-point range, right? Went from 45 to 25 at the rim, went from 21 to 22 from three-point range. So where is he taking more of his shots from? Between 16 feet and the three-point line. Between 10 feet and 16 feet. That's where he's taking more shots. He shot 24% of his field goal attempts from between 16 and 3. All right? The most inefficient shots that you can take in basketball. 24% of his shots were from there last year. Only 14% of his shots were from that distance when he was a rookie. As Ty Lawson's career has gone on, the shots that he's taking are getting worse and worse. He shot 40% from three-point range as a rookie. He only shoots 34% from three-point range, shot 34% from three-point range last year. Like, those aren't numbers that make you feel good about the guy that you're getting. And I think they should have made the trade. Don't get me wrong. But it is interesting to look at Lawson because Lawson's been playing in Denver and then the Nuggets were terrible last year. You have to kind of deal with the fact that I don't think we actually know what he's doing in basketball because we're not paying that much attention. But that's the basketball concern with Ty Lawson. Let me tell you the part that I do find to be really interesting, though. And I'm not one of those people that really gets into the cult of the general manager, right? I don't like the way that we heap all this praise upon the general managers where we want to talk about the quote-unquote geniuses more than we talk about the actual athletes, right? Like more than we talk about the reasons that we watch these games. There will never be a point that I care more about a general manager than I do care about a basketball player. However, here's what I have to give Daryl Morey credit for. And look, I think people give Daryl Morey a lot of credit without a lot of receipts, right? I think that Daryl Morey gets a lot of credit without the Rockets having really won too much of anything. But here is what I'll give Daryl Morey credit for. He is always ready for your desperation. Right? He's out here giving people payday loans, basically. And here's what I mean by that. Think about the James Harden trade. The Thunder had to trade James Harden. I understand every criticism that people have about the James Harden trade. Where I think that people get lost is they're like they should have held out and got a better deal. They couldn't bring James Harden back during the regular season. They couldn't bring Harden back for the regular season and then trade him in the middle of the season because it was highly unlikely that they were going to be able to get better by trading away James Harden. So you can't make a trade in the middle of the season if you're a playoff contender that's going to make you worse. You just can't. So if you're going to trade him, you had to trade him before the season started, before you had any chemistry issues, any of that. You didn't want to wind up in the Melo situation. The Thunder were desperate. Well, guess who's sitting there ready for the Thunder to be desperate? The Rockets. Daryl Morey with his collection of trinkets that he's willing to offer you. I have $24 worth of trinkets. I hear you have Manhattan Island to sell. That's what he's always ready for. So this happened with the Nuggets. The Nuggets are like, yo, we got to get Lawson out of here. We already got Moutier. All right, what are we going to do? So Morey's like, I have a bunch of players who aren't very good, but you might be able to get them off your cap pretty soon. Done. We'll take it. Boom. There he goes. Like, think about the haul that they got. If you add it up or put together what Morey gave up to get James Harden and what Morey gave up to get Ty Lawson, all right? And then look at what, how that actually worked out. Dude, he's right there for you with that payday loan, baby. Something come around and you got to make a move. Daryl Morey is right there to exploit your bad fortune all day long. I have a peculiar respect for that fact. That's where he gets his credit from me, right? Like, I'm not getting into all this he's so much smarter than everybody else stuff and everything else. Yeah, okay, fine, maybe. But I will say this. The man is prepared for the day that you need to get him on the phone because you got a problem that nobody else can fix. And then he's in there playing that trinket game. Dog, I don't even know who the Rockets gave up to get Lawson. Like, I looked it up when it happened. I didn't see a single name worth remembering. I do think they traded away Pablo Prigioni. That's all I got. That's a payday loan. But, hey, man, if you the one that need that money become payday, you happy for that payday loan now, aren't you?
Bomani.
Been talking about the trade the Houston Rockets made to acquire Ty Lawson for, like, just kind of a bunch of stuff. Like, that's pretty much it. Just kind of like a handful of trinkets is basically what this trade was. This is one of those trades that basically said, look, we just got to get him out of here. That's it. All right. So they got him out of there. The Rockets now have a pretty interesting team. I mean, if you think about it, they say that Lawson is going to come off the bench behind Patrick Beverley. I don't see how that makes that much sense, but hey, do you, right? But they say Lawson is going to come off the bench behind Patrick Beverley. I say that Lawson is going to wind up being the starter. I think that Lawson is the third best player on the Rockets. I had some people argue with me about the idea that Lawson would be the third best player on the Rockets, but I'm asking you, if you don't think that Lawson's the third best player on the Rockets, who do you have as number 3? Like, let me pull that roster up right fast to make sure I'm not losing my mind. Like, I'd say number 1 is James Harden. I'd say number 2 is Dwight Howard. And unless you're saying number 3 is Trevor Ariza or Terrence Jones, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's Lawson. Like, that's it. All right? So your 3 best players are Ty Lawson, James Harden, and Dwight Howard. Here's my only question. Who's in charge here? Seriously. Who's in charge here? Doesn't somebody have to be the grown-up? And the Rockets are an interesting case study in this because Morey has demonstrated kind of repeatedly that if you can play basketball, he's not so worried about the other stuff. Like, I think a lot more old school GMs would have some chemistry questions about this Rockets team, and they would have gone and brought in some kind of grizzled veteran, right? Like, you may think of Jason Terry as being that grizzled veteran, but that's not what I'm talking about, right? Like, I'm thinking more of a David West type of character. Somebody to be the grown-up, all right? Daryl Morey's not doing that. Like, look, he's the dude that when Royce White came to him in the draft, in spite of all the concerns, he's like, yo, he's too talented. We're going to go ahead and take him. Like, that's the way that he looks at things. That's how he sees it, for better or worse. And the thing I've always said about these guys with a strong analytics bent is that I don't feel like they pay enough attention to the human components of all of these things. Like, these are still people. All the things about having groups of people are still going to apply. And if you are inclined to believe that those chemistry type things matter, and I'm inclined to do that, who on this team is going to be in charge? Because somebody's got to be in charge. Like, I'm trying to think of a team. Keep it in mind that the Rockets made the Western Conference Finals last year. I'm trying to think of a team that achieved that level of success and then added to it with another player that's pretty good and then winds up in a situation where they still don't have anybody that you can trust to be in charge. I don't really have anything to match this. Now, look, I think Dwight Howard turns 30 this year. But Dwight Howard ain't the grown-up. Like, that's not what you look at Dwight Howard for. I think Dwight Howard, the way that you learn to stay sane in talking about Dwight Howard is coming to realize that he don't want to grow up. He's a Toys R Us kid. You know, that's just what it's going to be. He's never going to grow up. Like, he's not going to be that guy. I don't know what it's going to take for James Harden to grow up. So, like, who's in charge here? Because I got nothing. Tell you this, though, and the telephone number is 888-729-3776. Do you realize how loaded, and I repeat, loaded, the Western Conference is going to be next year? Like, somebody made this point, I can't remember exactly who it was, but I'm going to throw it out here in a paraphrase sort of way to help you get the perspective on it. Look, the Warriors, the defending champions, okay? The Rockets just added Lawson. The Spurs just added LaMarcus Aldridge and David West. One of those teams is not going to make the Western Conference Finals. That's before we get to the Clippers, who, by the way, were up 3-1 on the Rockets, right? And they're actually a little better than they were last year. Anthony Davis is going to take a quantum leap, I expect, with the Pelicans. The Thunder are going to be back at full strength, we think, because we expect Kevin Durant to have a, fully formed foot. That's alliteration, fully formed foot. Anyway, that's what we expect to happen. A whole lot of people are going to wind up, like, having to lose in the West. A whole lot. And the Rockets, as much as Lawson makes them better, do we know exactly how much better he does make them? Like, how good do they wind up being? What kind of basketball are you going to get out of Lawson? I talked about this in the last segment, that the Rockets are a team that wants to shoot at the rim, and they want to shoot threes. Lawson shoots fewer shots at the rim than he ever has, like way fewer shots for the rim than he ever has, and he's worse at shooting threes now than he's ever been. Like, it was one of those things for the Rockets where you got to do it. Like, there's no risk. You're just giving up your scraps. There's absolutely no risk to taking on Ty Lawson. I just want to see what actually happens. I do want to say this, though, before we go to a telephone call. There were a lot of people when Lawson made that trade that had the immediate reaction, and, they expressed this to me. They had their immediate reaction that, Houston, for a guy that may have a drinking problem, Houston is a dangerous place for him to be with all those bars and strip clubs and everything else. Dog, I got news for you. If you got a drinking problem, there isn't a place in the world that isn't dangerous for you to be. Like, you wind up somewhere and there's too much to do, it could exacerbate your drinking problem. You wind up somewhere and there's nothing to do, it could exacerbate your drinking problem. Hey, man, if we just want to be honest about this, if you live in a state with legal weed and you still got a drinking problem, there's a good chance you might wind up with a drinking problem anywhere. Know what I mean? I think you do.
Bomani.
All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, including our next guest. He writes for ESPN, the magazine. He also appears on Around the Horn, where he will be guest hosting all week. That's what happens when you're versatile. They give you a whole lot of jobs to do. His name is Pablo Torre. Pablo, what's going on?
Do not deprive me of my Subway Fresh Take Hotline introduction. That really does make me feel like we're running an official operation here. But, yes, thank you for having me as always.
Well, I was a little bit more concerned of depriving Subway of their Subway Fresh Take, hot take, observation, Fresh Take, whatever it is. They get a little salty about that. This is going to surprise you, but they pay for those things.
I am shocked. Now, I don't want to get too behind the curtain here, but do you actually get feedback on, you didn't mention, our special, whatever. I don't know if you do. I guess you don't really do the granular, like, there's a special at Subway, 6-inch subs or now, whatever it is. You don't get those, right? But do they give you feedback on, hey, you missed the other day with that one guest, you didn't mention the hotline? Do you get those calls?
I would not know because I don't miss them. I do my job. Shout out to all my bosses that are listening. We are talking to Pablo Torre of ESPN, the magazine. Pablo, what do you think about the Ty Lawson trade? Your man Maury. It looked like basically he loan sharked him. He gives payday loans is the way I'm putting it. Oh, you're in a little bit of trouble? I can help you out.
Yeah, at the very least. And you can have any range of opinions about Daryl Morey, ranging from the hashtag rings with 5 Z's after it. You didn't win anything perspective, even though they just made the Western Conference, to the more reasonable perspective that you have, which is there's a more humanistic view of sports that tends to get kind of dampened when you're so analytic. I'm somewhere, I think, in between there. I'm pretty bullish on him, but one thing you cannot take away from him is that asset management is his thing. I mean, don't forget that Daryl Morey went to, MIT Sloan, Northwestern, worked for the same company, I believe, as Mitt Romney, Bain Consulting, all of these big financial firms. The one thing they teach you is keep track of your assets because you don't know when you're going to be able to exploit somebody who isn't good at keeping track of their assets. And that's what it comes down to is, oh, wait a minute, I really need a favor because I'm that desperate. And guess what? Whatever the Rockets offered was somehow less desperate. Or maybe more desperate, I guess, than what the Lakers did, which I just want to know what the Lakers offered because that must have been funny.
Yeah, well, see, I think it's funny because I don't even think that in the case of the Nuggets, they can't quite keep track of their assets. They were just like, we got to get Lawson out of here right now, and we really like the Moutier guy. Like, whatever it takes. Oh, you got some scraps that we can release? Yeah, we'll take that. That's fine.
The thing about the Lawson specifically, though, and I think you're right, that's fair. There is a specific special circumstance when he has 2 DUIs in 6 months. That's something that I guess your best actuarial planners probably are keeping track of ahead of time. But I do think it's hilarious that, and not the DUI stuff, but the fact that Ty Lawson, not only is somebody who they wanted to get away so immediately from Moutier, but Ty Lawson is also one of the hilarious subplots is that Ty Lawson, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, I think it's been blogged about and tweeted recently, but he did take a shot at James Harden, posting in the most 2014 or 50, whatever year it was, sort of way, the photo of James Harden as the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator at the time when the Dallas Cowboys defense was terrible, and James Harden. And so Ty Lawson posts this photo. My favorite part about that, though, is that he not only tweets that image, which is, a shots fired sort of a thing, he then hashtags #RP. He's reposting it, and Ty Lawson wants you to know that he did not make this himself, not because he wants to take credit or mitigate the credit for coming up with this idea, but because intellectual property on memes is something that is very important to Ty Lawson, apparently.
We're talking to Pablo Torre of ESPN, the magazine. One thing about Lawson that's interesting, I mentioned this last segment earlier. I'm not sure if you saw this, but did you realize that he's now going to a team that only wants to shoot layups and threes, and now he shoots fewer layups than he ever had before and is worse at shooting threes than he'd ever been before?
Yeah, the general trajectory of Ty Lawson's career, not tracking great in a lot of ways. But I think, and I was thinking about this, not just the analytic on-court analysis of his game, which I'm sure Morey sees him as a guy, obviously, who they bought low on, who's underperforming in all these ways they can reawaken him to and galvanize. But even if we take, and I think it's the right mode to take, alcoholism as this very serious thing that we usually tend to underrate as like, oh, he's just going to get a wake-up call, or he's going to visit with John Lucas and he's going to cure him of alcoholism. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. Who knows what degree of problem Ty Lawson has, although I think we can lean to the end of the spectrum that's increasingly problematic. The fact is, today, the news that I saw that Ty Lawson made the second year of his contract non-guaranteed. Like, Ty Lawson is actually putting on the table some amount of money on the range of $12-13 million, whatever that was, which to me, look, I don't know. I don't know what kind of stock Ty Lawson is right now, but I just looked it up. He's giving up the guaranteed $13.2 million in that second year. Like, that makes me feel better as a stock picker that guy is willing to put that money on the line. Again, could be a terrible, terrible decision in the line of terrible decisions for Ty Lawson. This could be a terrible backfire. But in terms of awakening him, that's a good thing, I think.
Wait a minute. He gave up a guarantee, what? Because I'm looking at the contract right now.
Yes, the headline, I'm reading it on Pro Basketball Talk on NBC Sports right now. It was posted 3 hours ago. Ty Lawson allows final season of contract to become unguaranteed, puts $13,213,482 on the line.
Why would you do that?
Wow, Ty Lawson.
What is he trying to prove?
Truly amazing.
Who is he trying to impress? I'm so confused.
Why
would you do that?
But that's the thing. Like, if you're looking for the guy who's like, man, we need signs of maturity. Is this kid going to grow up? Is he going to flip that magical, metaphorical switch? Look, I think it's a terrible idea, but I guess he's trying to gesture in the direction of, hey, I'm going to really earn this money, which I guess is something. But, man, that is a lot of money to give up.
But did his agent go to college with Daryl Morey or something? Like, what the hell is that?
I guess it seems like if you're reading between the lines, there's something even more fascinating here in terms of how Ty Lawson got from point A, Denver, to point B, Houston. It's that it may have been a condition of the trade. Like, maybe they would only do the deal if he was willing to do that. Either way, I don't know. Again, who knows who? You would like to think that this was something that the agent had to succumb to after long and hard negotiations. But maybe Ty Lawson's stock is just that low, which, again, what was the Lakers offering? Who knows? But, geez, this is a lot to give up. A second guaranteed year on that contract when you're the guy who just went into rehab. That's the guy who put that money on the line. That is a lot.
Wow. We're talking to Pablo Torre of ESPN, the magazine. Hey, man, what are we going to talk about the rest of this week in our sports programming, man? Like, what are we going to do? Do people know that the sports calendar is dead right now? Do people understand that, do you think? I think after listening to me talk about Ty Lawson for 40 minutes, they got a hint.
I think you might end up talking about Ty Lawson for 5 days.
Dude, that was what made DeAndre Jordan so great. DeAndre Jordan got us through an entire week. What in the world would we have done if we didn't have DeAndre Jordan during that whole week?
Yeah, if DeAndre Jordan didn't turn his life into a telenovela, who knows where the sports media news cycle would have been. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I actually looked at my calendar, and I think the only thing that we can hope for is the Tom Brady, Roger Goodell thing, and God knows when that's ever going to come and whether that'll be fun to talk about. I assume it'll be a lot like what we've been talking about it already for weeks and months now. So I'm not really. Yeah, to people who are listening who did not understand the rhythms of the sports news calendar, there is a reason why you may turn on your preferred sports news channel and notice that certain people are taking vacations this week. Maybe it's the host of the show that you like. Maybe it's a producer of the show that you like. But this tends to be a week when people feel safe getting away for a while.
Basically, what Pablo just said is he's guest hosting on Around the Horn this week because Tony got the hell out of Dodge and so did the producer.
Tony Reale is in France right now. That is a way better place to be than the sweltering porta-john that is Times Square when it's full of like just tourists who are thrilled to be in Times Square, and you just like nothing about this viscerally, psychologically makes any sense to you as somebody who is now like sprinting into the closest taxi cab with air conditioning.
You are such a New Yorker right now. Pablo Torre, ESPN Magazine. Check him out. He's hosting Around the Horn all week, 5 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. My man, thank you so much.
Anytime.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Interesting story for you. I saw on the internet today as I was trying to find out what in the world I would possibly talk to you wonderful people about, and I found something that would be kind of humorous to discuss, and I'm going to go ahead and do this for you, okay? So, you guys may remember that Nick Saban used to be the coach of the Miami Dolphins. He famously said while he was the coach of the Miami Dolphins that he was not going to be the Alabama coach. And then, became the Alabama coach. He's caught a lot of hell for that ever since, and it's been just kind of a prevailing belief that Nick Saban was a liar because he said he wasn't going to take that job, and then he ultimately took it. And I always cut him some slack on that one. I always thought from looking at that, and then from talking to more people who kind of know Saban a little bit better, that what seemed clear to me was when he said he wasn't going to be the Alabama coach, he didn't think he was going to be the Alabama coach. And then some things changed, and he thought about it a little more, and he was like, you know what, this is probably going to be the right decision for me to make. And it's not like he left Miami to go coach Central Florida, right? Like, he left to go coach Alabama. I would like to know, by the way, that as we discussed how insane, at least I discussed how insane I thought it would be for LeBron to leave Miami to move back to Cleveland, Nick Saban kind of beat him to it. I mean, he left Miami to go to Tuscaloosa. Right. Like, at least when you look at a map, Cleveland got a dot. Tuscaloosa ain't got no dot. Like, Tuscaloosa got a dot if you put up a map of the county that it's in. But Tuscaloosa ain't got no dot otherwise. Right? So anyway, here's how it appears that Nick Saban wound up going to Alabama. Nick Saban said he was staying with the Dolphins. He was going to stay with the Dolphins. Nick Saban's wife, however, she had had enough. So, while Nick Saban, and this is according to a book by a gentleman named Monty Burke called Saban, The Making of a Coach. While Saban was meeting with the owner of the Dolphins, talking about his future, Nick Saban's wife, Terry, was meeting with Mal Moore, the athletic director at Alabama. Right. Nick Saban's at work talking about his job. Terry Saban is at the crib meeting with the athletic director at Alabama, telling that man how miserable Nick Saban was in the league and that he missed coaching in college. That's right. Little did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that Nick Saban's life is not much different than yours. And how's his life not much different than yours? You don't get to make decisions all willy-nilly and unilaterally. Like, every time a situation comes up with a coach and about whether or not they're going to take the job, and look, maybe this is, I think, in part the dynamic of a lot of marriages that come up in coaching where what the man wants is just what happens. But most of you guys, you got wives, you got kids. You don't just get to make decisions all on your own. There are things to be considered. And in this particular case, there were considerations outside of Nick Saban, and apparently one of those considerations took matters into her own hands. Because here's the other interesting part. Not only did she say that Nick Saban missed coaching college, she told the athletic director at Alabama, this is Nick Saban's wife, that she wanted out. And here's a quote from the book. In the NFL, the coach's wife had no real role in the community. On a college campus, particularly at a place like Alabama, the coach's wife was a figure of prominence, a queen bee. So Nick Saban's wife is down here in Miami like, look, I ain't nobody in Miami. She break out her credit card with her name written on the bottom, and all they say is sign this. She enjoyed the life where she was a somebody. Like one of those magazines that covers Alabama football, they had a cover, I think it was about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. And on the cover was A.J. McCarron's then girlfriend, I forgot her name. Catherine, or whatever it was. You know who I'm talking about, right? So it's A.J. McCarron's then girlfriend, and she's on the cover with Nick Saban's wife. Yo, no disrespect, but they ain't putting her on the cover of nothing in Miami. That just isn't how it works down here. It ain't going down. Yeah. So she's like, look, back when we was in Baton Rouge, I was somebody. In Miami, I'm nobody. Like, even if the somebody is just being Nick Saban's wife, the things that come with being Nick Saban's wife at Alabama that just don't come from being Nick Saban's wife with the Dolphins. That's it. She's like, nah. I think it's time for us to make this here work. And then, listen to this. This is also from the book written by Monty Burke called Saban, the Making of a Coach. As Moore was leaving, Terry pulled him aside and told him they had to find a way to get her husband on the plane to Tuscaloosa the next day. Like, yo, she had a plan. She's like, yo, I know my man, and this is what you need to do. And I bet that dude from Alabama was like, okay, just tell me what I need to do to help. In fact, I bet that man from Alabama was like, I can't really get him on the plane, but I bet you can get him on the plane. Like, at that point, you'd athletic director at Alabama, I don't have any more work to do. My work here is done. I got the greatest runner of all time. And she's not working for me. She's working for her. Got in Nick Saban's here. Next thing you know, Nick Saban is coming to Alabama. Now, I bring that up because, as I mentioned at the beginning of talking about this, I think that people still kind of look at Nick Saban as a dishonest man or as somebody that you can't trust, in large part because of what happened with the way that he left the Dolphins. All I'm saying is, you've done stuff like that too. That's just how it works. You've done stuff like that too. The other thing I'd like to bring up about this, Nick Saban is like a Lilliputian, right? He's like 5'5", 5'6", or something like that. He's a little man, right? He comports himself in a lot of ways like a little man. He has a very little manish managerial strategy. That's kind of how he approaches things. But he manages to scare the hell out of people. He gets in people's faces and he screams at them all the time. Like, that's how Nick Saban gets down. All I'm saying is, after I find out that your wife put you on that plane and you went and took that job under those circumstances, I ain't about to be afraid of you no more. Like, that's not to say that I should have the same sort of influence on Nick Saban that his wife does. And that's not even to say that I judge him necessarily for the fact that his wife seems to have in large part made this decision. I'm just saying, it ain't going to sound the same when you're out here screaming at me like this when I know you got some back down in you. Like, it is clear that you got some back down in you. True story. Frank Martin, the basketball coach of South Carolina, he says the reason he screams so much at his players is because he has absolutely no control at home. His wife runs things at home. He has absolutely no control, so he screams at the players because that's the only place that he happens to be in charge. I just bring that up so that you know that a lot of these coaches are living the same life a lot of y'all are, right? Your friends may pick on you. They may call you names. The word whipped may come up. You might as well tell them, for all we know, so was Vince Lombardi. Because, hey, man, Nick Saban out here getting run. Happens to the best of us, my man. Happens to the best of us. Oh, and she was right, as is often the case when you're getting run.
Bomani.
They concluded the British Open today. Zach Johnson won. Jordan Spieth did not. And there we go. I have just talked about the British Open. I figured that I had to. There you go right there. Spieth choked, by the way. No matter what anybody says, Spieth choked. And the reason I say the Spieth choked, no matter what anybody says, is this, man. People choke in golf. Like, this is not quite the indictment in individual sports, I think, that it is in team sports. Because in individual sports, where you're out there by yourself and there's nowhere to lean and nobody to cover for you, there's never any way for you to escape when you do choke or you do play badly in a big spot. Like Kobe Bryant in Game 7 in 2010 shot 7 for 24 from the field, right? But it's a team game. Nobody else is making shots. you had something there. Pau Gasol could help cover for you in that situation. You don't think about that as a choke or anything like that. Individual sports just don't allow for that. You're out there by yourself. I don't think there's anybody who is prominent in an individual sport who has not had a high-profile moment of choking. That's how it goes. So when you say it happened to Spieth, it's just not that big of a thing. It's a statement of fact. I mean, I think anybody that's ever played any measure of golf has happened to choke, and you're choking over playing by yourself. You're choking because you're trying to break 100. You're choking because you've never made a birdie on that hole before, right? The same things are going to happen to guys with those stakes, and there's just nowhere to hide. Anyway, that's the British Open, because we got to talk about some gossip stuff. You seen what's going on with Scottie Pippen and Shaq? Now, I think it's kind of an interesting question. Well, basically, Shaq got on Instagram, and he said that a team of all-time great Lakers, right? A lineup of Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Elgin Baylor, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. No, I don't know how Shaquille O'Neal and Kareem would really play at the same time, but whatever. But he says that lineup would beat Derrick Rose, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Horace Grant by 50 points. That's what he said. Scottie Pippen came back on Instagram, because it's the 21st century. He came back on Instagram with a picture of him and Michael Jordan, because of course Scottie would send a picture of him and Michael Jordan, and it says, "Sorry, Shaq, but I don't get caught up in hypotheticals. All I know is we won 6 titles, twice the amount you claimed while in L.A." Damn. Now, guys, I don't know if you know very much about Shaquille O'Neal, right? But Shaquille O'Neal, he doesn't really know how to play. That's not really his thing. Like, you know that friend where you could joke on your friend and be like, "Damn, your shirt all wrinkled." And his reply, "That's why your mama's ugly." We all have that friend. You know that friend. The friend that you just cannot play with. You just can't, right? Shaq is that friend. Shaq has always been that friend. And I don't even know if he's actually friends with Scottie Pippen, right? But anyway, that's the kind of dude Shaquille O'Neal is. So how does Shaq reply when Scottie Pippen says this about 6 rings? He takes the same picture of Jordan and Scottie, puts Jordan's face over Scottie, so it's Jordan and Jordan. And he says, "Anybody need a T-Mobile sidekick? I got a pretty good one." And it's a picture of Scottie Pippen's face photoshopped onto a T-Mobile sidekick, as he calls Scottie Pippen a sidekick. Come on, Shaq. Shaq, you started off talking about teams. Scottie Pippen comes back talking about teams. What Shaq do? "That's why your mama ugly." Man, that's basically what it came back to. Shaq, you ain't got to do that, man. Come on now. But that's what happens. Shaq play too much, except he plays the hard way. And then what does Scottie Pippen do? Keep in mind, by the way, let me Google this up so I'm sure that I'm right about this. Scottie Pippen turns 50 years old in September. Shaquille O'Neal is 43 years old. We got 93 combined years in an Instagram feud. That's 2015. And what does Pippen do? Pippen puts up a picture of Shaq with Penny, of Shaq with Kobe, of Shaq with Wade, of Shaq with Steve Nash, of Shaq with LeBron James. It says, "Speaking of being a sidekick, if I recall correctly, you know a thing or two about that as well." Damn. I got to say, though, I hadn't quite noticed this, but Shaq has been a sidekick quite a bit. Like, you could make the argument that Shaq has kind of been the sidekick on every team that he was on from 2003 on. You know Shaq ain't going to let that slide, right? Like, what is Shaq going to say to Kobe Bryant next? I guarantee you this. I mean, it's not Kobe Bryant. Well, he might say something to Kobe Bryant, too. Who knows? But what is he going to say to Scottie Pippen next? because I have a feeling it's going to be something way, way, way below the belt. But you know what's unfortunate about this? And the telephone number is 888-729-3776. Dog, Scottie Pippen, is anybody more legendary in sports for being a sidekick than Scottie Pippen? Like, we can get into a discussion of just how good Scottie Pippen was. I'm inclined to say that Scottie Pippen was a wee bit overrated. However, I told you a story the other day. I knew a dude who was talking to a dude. They worked at the same place, and the dude said to him, I think that me and you could be the Jordan and Pippen of this place, to which he replied, well, who's Pippen? Like, nobody wants to be called Pippen. Scottie Pippen is a Hall of Famer, but nobody wants to be Scottie Pippen. Seriously. Nobody wants to be Scottie Pippen. Like, I'm sure you'll have guys that when they wind up getting to the NBA, if they got an all-purpose game, they'll be like, I model my game after Scottie Pippen. I feel pretty confident saying that wasn't like your first idea on how you wanted to do this. Like, who wants to be Scottie Pippen? Everybody, in the words of the great Chad L. Butler of the Underground Kings, everybody want a ball. Nobody wants to be number two. Yeah, I just, my dream really is to be the man standing next to the man. Who wants that? That's what life is being Scottie Pippen. Like, Scottie Pippen is a Hall of Famer with 6 rings. And anytime Scottie Pippen says something, sidekick. So, like, try this one on. Say that things had shaken out a bit differently, and say that Shaq hadn't been on the Lakers, right? And say he was comparing his team to the great Lakers teams. And say Michael Cooper popped up and was like, yo, we got more rings when I was with the Lakers than you did when you were with, when you were with the team that you were with. He's not going to say anything to Michael Cooper about that. Like, Michael Cooper was another dude on a basketball team. He was a great defensive player, and we respect Michael Cooper for that. Scottie Pippen, they throw it at Scottie Pippen, and next thing you know, it's an insult. Now, some guy just popped up in my mentions, and he says, and I quote, just about anyone would like to be loaded like Scottie Pippen. Slow down. First of all, get out of Scottie Pippen's pocket. Second of all, you might want to look that up when you talk about Scottie Pippen's pockets. Number 3, why did you miss the point so badly? Nobody. Why don't you guys? Like, it's bad enough that you don't like jokes. You also don't like good sense.
Bomani.
Zach Greinke for the Dodgers. Zach Greinke has an ERA of 1.3. Like, we're talking about Bob Gibson type stuff now with Zach Greinke. We're also very clearly talking about Don Drysdale, Oral Hershiser type stuff with Zach Greinke, because Zach Greinke has 43 2/3 scoreless innings in a row. So the record is 59. We're 2 shutout starts away from Zach Greinke breaking like one of the most impressive records in professional sports. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, this record is held up now longer for Oral Hershiser than it held up for Don Drysdale. Like, that's a Roger Maris type thing, that by the time Roger Maris's record had gotten broken, he had that record longer than Babe Ruth had that record. That's where we are right now in this one with Oral Hershiser. Like, this is a serious, serious record, and nobody cares. Like, nobody cares at all. How in the world does a dude get to 43 2/3 scoreless innings? And I guarantee you a whole lot of people are listening right now and had absolutely no idea that this was going on. I didn't realize it was going on until it had gotten up to 43 2/3. And he's doing this on a staff where Clayton Kershaw has something like 27 straight scoreless innings in a row. Like, yo, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty incredible. Nobody gives a damn. Like, at all. What's it going to take for you to, like, really care about something impressive somebody does in baseball? Seriously. I asked that question. What's it going to take? Like, is there any home run feat that'll make you care? Because part of what happened with the home run era that I think is interesting is that our expectations got so thrown off by some of those numbers that people threw up during that steroid era that now that it's time to recalibrate it, we don't care. Like, we just don't care. So when Cecil Fielder hit 51 home runs in 1991, he was the first person to hit 50 home runs since George Foster did in, I think, 1977. He was the first guy to do it in that, in well over a decade. It was a thing. Like, it came up all the time. The Tigers weren't good, but 50 home runs, like, that meant something. That was a thing. There's nothing in baseball that seems to mean anything at all. Like, the records in terms of power now are basically are unbreakable. Like, nobody's going to hit 73 home runs. It's not going to happen. No one's going to hit those records. Those old RBI records and stuff, like, they're gone. Like, that whole wing of records is just basically gone. They don't exist. They don't matter, except they do because they actually are the records. So, like, I've thought about this with baseball, where after the strike, people thought in 1995 that Cal Ripken and breaking the Lou Gehrig record, that kind of brought interest back into baseball, and that was kind of the segue into the home run chase in 1998. And I think that there's maybe something to that, but, I mean, nobody's going to be playing 2,100 games in a row anytime soon. So what's it going to take? Like, what is it going to take to make for baseball to capture people? Like, Mike Trout right now looks like he could be one of the greatest baseball players of all time. Like, there are numbers and there are metrics that indicate that comparisons to guys like Mickey Mantle are not off base. He is that good. If Mike Trout walked into the mall where you live, if you don't live in Anaheim, like, are you sure that the dude working the register at the Cinnabon would know who he was? Like, I'm just very curious, what's it going to take? Because you can make the argument, well, we just don't care that much about baseball anymore. That's fine, but we don't care about golf either, right? But we cared about Tiger Woods. We don't care about golf, and I personally can't get really on board with the Jordan Spieth thing, not because there's a problem with him. I just don't find it to be exciting regardless of how good he is. Like, I'm just not captivated by it. But there are people who are captivated by it in a way, and we talk about it, and it comes up. I can't figure out what in the world baseball would have to do to really come up like that on a national scale. Like, I've felt in a lot of ways that baseball, in terms of perception, it's the only game that's, like, hurt by being national. Like, you can't really follow baseball the way you can follow basketball. You can follow the whole league in basketball. Like, the way you got to follow baseball, because there's so many teams, you follow your team, and you follow them to death, and you follow them when they play the other teams, and that's how you keep up with stuff. But it's not really a national thing. Like, the World Series used to come around, and if you were a fan of a National League team, it was like a whole nother world was opening up when you saw the playoffs on television, because you didn't pay any attention to the other league. Like, there's no really time for that if you're going to follow baseball. You follow one team, you follow it to death. Those are the people who love baseball the most, or people who take one team and then they follow it to death. So what in the world would it take for baseball to become a truly captivating national topic? We've had Game 7s in the World Series that didn't do that. Like, really, what would it be? And I have no answer for that. Because if a dude has 43 2/3 scoreless innings and that doesn't seem to move the needle even a little bit, like, I don't care how much money the baseball guys are making. That is a problem. Like, this dude might do something that we've never seen before. And it's just kind of going down as a footnote. Nobody seems to care.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
I just had something in mind that I was going to talk about as Jerome Solomon of the Houston Chronicle will be joining us soon. And I had something, and then I thought about it, and then just that fast, boop, it was gone. I always hate it when it happens. But, hey, you see that dude fight that shark? Yeah. It was a surfing competition off the coast of South Africa, and an Australian gentleman was on his surfboard, and he got surrounded by sharks. And he wound up punching a shark and then got away. And I really have spent a significant amount of my day trying to figure out what would I do if I got surrounded by sharks. Like, what's your plan? What's your program? What do you do when you get surrounded by sharks? Because I don't feel like punching the shark would have been my strategy. I mean, it seemed to have worked. Don't get me wrong. It seems to have been effective. I just feel like my brain wouldn't have worked that way. Like, I got to give that dude all the credit in the world. Like, for example, I always say, I don't know if you remember this once, but Steven Jackson was out with his buddies, and they were at a strip club in Indianapolis, and they kind of jumped off, and Steven Jackson shot off in the air 2 or 3 times, and that diffused the situation. And I have to admit, I gave him credit because I wouldn't have known what to do in that situation. I wouldn't have had any idea what to do in that situation. Steven Jackson knew, and who am I to knock him when he had a plan, and I did not. Anyway, that's enough killing time. On the line with us, he is a columnist for the Houston Chronicle. He is also from Acres Homes in Houston, which I just find to be entertaining, and everyone who has been to Acres Homes is glad to hear this gentleman on the radio. His name is Jerome Solomon. Jerome, what's going on?
I'm cracking up on you applauding Steven Jackson for firing in the air because you call it a plan. That's pretty good.
I'm applauding his presence of mind. All right? Look. He was surrounded by sharks, too.
We call that presence of pistol.
Yes. But, dude, where am I from?
You from out there in Wallace. Everybody packing.
I am from Houston, actually. I don't know why you don't believe me when I say that. But I am from Houston, and it is very important to understand that somebody possessing a firearm just doesn't throw me off the way it does other people. So you got a gun and you got a plan. Hey, we going home.
And nobody got hurt. So, yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't feel the totality of the situation to be properly evaluated. We're talking to Jerome Solomon of the Houston Chronicle. Hey, man, the Rockets got Ty Lawson, and they basically got him for nothing. I imagine there's cause for excitement, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we're talking about a team that, you know, you can debate whether they deserve it or not, but it's a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals and did it without 2 starters. I mean, and that's one of the starters is point guard Patrick Beverly, who was by no means a great basketball player, but you bring Beverly into that mix and they give the Warriors a little bit more of a run, certainly not good enough to beat them, but now you add Ty Law and don't take out anybody from the rotation. That's a team that on paper is supposed to be able to compete and play with anybody, and that's when you can do that kind of a move, however they got lucky and fell into it, that's something worthy for the fans to get excited about.
Well, does this team need a grown-up? Because their 3 best players do not appear to be grown-ups.
Well, every team needs a grown-up, there's no question, but you need talent as much as anything. You can have a whole team of grown-ups, but if they can't play, you're not going to get anywhere. And James Harden is probably more of a grown-up than we give him credit for. We forget how young he is and how he's come into this, and he's grown year after year, but he hasn't been, on the court. He's a serious basketball player, and he takes it serious, and his off-the-court stuff hasn't, really affected his on-the-court. And his off-the-court stuff is just he likes to party, and, what rich man at 24, 25 years old now that he is doesn't like to hang out a little bit, and he's an L.A. guy. So I don't even think of him as not being a grown-up. I just think he has a lot more growth to come, and I don't have any doubt that it will come. Dwight Howard, on the other hand, is a youngster and always will be a big kid, and there's nothing you can do about that.
We're talking to Jerome Solomon of the Houston Chronicle, and that's what I was about to say. As much as you can say that Harden is going to grow up, then there's Dwight, who's like the walking example of not growing up. But it seems like Dwight's found his lane, though, because he picks his game up in big moments and does all that kind of grown-up stuff. He just does it while wearing underoos.
and that's the point. He likes to run around, playing like he playing a big kid, and he wears goofy hats and goofy looks and childish, eyeglasses, and he likes to laugh. He doesn't take himself so seriously that it sometimes looks like he doesn't care, but he does care. He's just a different sort of cat, and I really don't criticize the person for being different. I criticize their game, and his game at times has not been up to snuff. I mean, he'll get into those bad moods where you can tell he doesn't want to be on the court, and that's a problem. And that became a problem in the playoffs. He dominated for much of it, but then every now and then he just decided, well, let me pick up a silly foul, let me try to get a technical, let me get thrown out, and people didn't really discuss it because it didn't matter after they got beaten in 5 games. But had the playoff series against the Warriors gone to 6, he wouldn't have been able to play because of the point system and the technical fouls he picked up by doing dumb things throughout the playoffs. You can't do anything about that. You just hope that he finds himself quiet and peaceful during your playoff run. And a guy like Ty Law should make it easier on him. They should have some easier games and be able to do some things where you're not depending on Dwight Howard to lead you, because he's proved throughout his career that he's not that kind of leader.
I tell you, it's funny, though. You talk about him being the big kid, and I'll just always remember about Lawson. He's a freshman in North Carolina walking around the Dean Dome in SpongeBob pajamas. That's it. Like, you now have a little big kid and a big kid on the same team.
Yeah, you do. And, and the DWI, people are talking about that a lot here in Houston. And I mean, it's really dumb, and it's doubly dumb to have it twice, but he's not the first athlete to have it happen, and he wouldn't be the first athlete to have that happen and then find himself straightened up, and it doesn't cost him from being a great player going forward, or, well, he can't be great, but being a really good player going forward. So it's another one of those where, I wouldn't roll the dice to say that it won't happen again. I wouldn't roll the dice and say that it will. I mean, it's up to him to decide how he wants to carry himself and if he wants to be smarter, because it's really dumb of him to have it happen once, and it's off the chart idiotic to have it happen twice in a matter of 6 months.
Well, let me ask you this about the DUI. Do you think the Rockets would have felt so comfortable making this trade if John Lucas did not live in Houston?
Yes. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's a convenient thing, and I love John Lucas, and he is excellent at handling these situations, and I know he will do all that he can to make it happen. But Lucas has worked with people where it didn't work. It's not on Lucas; it's on the person to make it happen. I mean, and that's we talk a lot more about these DWIs and these DUIs now than we ever did. Craig Biggio is going into the Hall of Fame this weekend coming up. He had one when he was a player. I mean, it happens, and people move on from it. If they choose to move on from it, they keep going down a downward spiral if they're unable to move on from it. And it has nothing to do with the program they're in. It has nothing to do with who's working with them. It's about what's in that person and his desires to be, a non-drinking driving rascal or a person who drinks and drives. It seems pretty simple to me.
As I recall, the other fun part of the Biggio DUI was his attempt to get out of the DUI. I remember that properly.
The officer walked up to the car, and before he said anything, Craig Biggio said, "I'm Craig Biggio of the Houston Astros." The officer like, "So?" Your driver's license. He handed him his driver's license with 2 $100 bills wrapped around it. Here you go. It was late at night, and he and Ken Caminiti, who ended up ODing and dying an early death, were out partying, celebrating a victory, and they figured they'd make it home safely with a couple $100 bills in the cop's pocket, and it didn't work out for him that night.
Hey, man, you play well enough, you can live to overcome these things. Jerome Solomon of the Houston Chronicle, my man, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime, both. Take care.
Bomani.
I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently Joel Embiid re-broke the navicular bone in his foot. I don't know what a navicular bone is. Like, to me, you say you got a broken foot, I don't really need to know the particulars. A broken foot's a broken foot as far as I'm concerned. It sounds like it hurt like hell. Anyway, apparently this is the same fracture that Yao Ming had, and it's the fracture that ended Yao Ming's career. And now the Sixers are concerned that basically this is it. Like, they drafted a guy who had a physical that was full of red flags, and they made the decision that he had the potential to be a star. So they rolled the dice on star. And I don't entirely blame them for rolling the dice on star. The only thing I would say about the Sixers, and this is where the thing about their process becomes interesting, yeah, they're getting players, but they still don't have anybody I think is going to turn out to be that star. Like, I think that Okafor in the modern game, there's some limitations to how much of a star that he can be. Nerlens Noel is a piece. Embiid was the one guy they had that had the potential to turn into a star. Maybe they get one in the draft next year. I have no idea. I imagine they're going to lose 60-something games again, so they damn well better get something out of it, right? However, if the plan on all this losing is to get yourself in a situation where you could get a star, I think you'd hope that you could get one of those stars out of the draft. It hasn't happened. And if Embiid is done, out of these guys they've taken so far, it's just not going to happen. Maybe it's the dude Saric that's overseas. I don't know. But the idea of Embiid being hurt, they rolled the dice on star. It came up snake eyes. Now, I still contend that in that draft, I didn't see anybody else that they just absolutely should have taken. But, hey, man, I felt like a big part of the process for the Sixers where they were trying to land those stars. Morey always said you need to have 2 top 15 players. Okay, what's going to get you there if you're the Sixers? I don't see it.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.